can beat anybody in the world, and I think we're going to win next Sunday.
It's picked off. Aaron Glenn. Jumble Elliott. One-handed catch. Chris Paul gets running loose. Revis can't wait.
Rap, what do you think about the fit Geno Smith back with the Jets?
Well, the football, okay, like we'll get to that in a second. But the personal side of it, I was texting with Geno right after the trade went down. It is a very cool thing. And I think Jets fans know, like there's always going to be a unfinished business, unanswered question with Geno. Like obviously, what if the incident doesn't happen? What if Fitz never takes over? Like, might that have been Geno? Might he still be the quarterback? Like, he had plenty of success in Seattle after a while, but when he had the chance, what actually would that year with a pretty good roster have been like?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll never know, and it's one of life's great unanswered questions. But at least we will get a look at like Geno being the starting quarterback for the Jets, and see what it comes from. Now, as far as like the fit, like football-wise, I like it. I think I liked the hire of Frank. I really thought that was a good, smart hire. He is as professional as it gets. He has been through it. He's seen a lot. I mean, there's a lot to like. Geno really needs to be a secure, smart quarterback, and I think he's going to be that, and I think he'll face a better situation, specifically on the offensive line, than he did at any point last year.
That's what I was just going to ask you about is the Jets' offensive line. You had 4 of the 5 starters come back, of course, who started 17 games last season. You added Dylan Parham, his former Raiders teammate in free agency as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Jets' offensive line could be good or maybe really, really good. And, you want to build a team. You want to do it the right way. Great place to start. And, like, plenty of talent, some high-end talent. Obviously you lose Vera Tucker, okay, but, very talented, but was not available. It is what it is. Was not available for a lot of the time. But you return most of the core from last year, and like so much of offensive line is continuity, and so I think you get that. And I think Dylan Parham's going to be good. Certainly going to be better coached than he was at any point last year. Any point. I think it has the potential to be like a really, really solid or potentially a lot better unit.
Yeah, and the Jets like their backs as well. Breece Hall, franchise tag.
Breece is pretty good.
Yeah.
Breece.
So Darren Mougey has been on the record saying that we'd like to work a long-term extension with him. The Jets haven't told July. What do you think ultimately happens there?
I mean, it makes sense to get something done. It's not like the market isn't – there'll be some running back deals, and I'm curious whether the Jets are negotiating knowing that there have been deals for Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson or not. Right? Like, or Devon Achane, another one. Like, they'll either be doing deals before those big running back deals or as they're happening or after. And, like, it's hard for me to understand the timing. Obviously, if you're the Jets, you'd like to be one of the first. You'd like to be the first to put your stake in the ground, be like, this is our guy, and also, sort of set the bar rather than jump over it. So doing a deal early, I think, makes a lot of sense. It shouldn't be that complicated because – based on where the franchise tag is, where the next franchise tag is, like you can figure out a deal based around that. I would also say I think they did the right thing in franchise tagging Breece rather than transition tagging, which was the kind of rumor at the time. If he's a big part of your franchise, do not mess around. Just keep him. And if you have to pay a little more than you thought, like, okay, but it's better than having to replace him because he signed an offer sheet that you can't match.
So it's just got Geno. Bailey Zappi on the roster. We'll have to see what happens with Tyrod Taylor. He remains an unrestricted free agent. And then also Brady Cook as well. But as far as drafting a quarterback, the Jets met with Ty Simpson last week.
I expect them to meet with every quarterback.
Right. So
I think they're going to do all the work, all the visits. I think maybe even private workouts. I expect them to do the full analysis.
Do you think a quarterback early is in play? Now, the Jets, of course, have the draft capital in 2027 as well that everybody's pointed to as far as the 3 first-round picks. Or do you think it's more likely for this team that has several needs that they could address, and they want to have good football players on the field right now that, hey, maybe you take a swing on a quarterback in a third or fourth round, more so than early in the draft.
Well, I think if it's early, it's probably going to be with that second one, which where's the second one?
16th overall.
16. Okay, still pretty early. But we'll see, because if you think Ty Simpson is a first rounder, then take him. Who cares? Take him at 16, trade back. I mean, just take him. They have the luxury of not having to play someone if they draft a quarterback. I think that's really good. They also have the luxury of knowing that they have a starter. So if they're not feeling it, then they don't have to take one. And I would also say this. Unlike most years with the quarterback position, there's two at least just really fascinating flyers. Like Drew LR, I have no idea what he is.
Yeah.
Garrett Nussmeier, I have no idea what he is. I know they were both considered first-round talents. I know they both didn't play great and got injured. I don't know if teams are going to view them as the first-rounders that we all thought they were going to be. But if you're a team like the Jets, you have plenty of picks to play with. You can throw a dart and go, either we'll waste a second or third rounder, I don't know, or we just got our franchise guy. I think that's the kind of thing, if it lines up, I could see them throwing the dart and saying, like, if it doesn't work, cool, we'll just pick one next year. No big deal.
Right. And you've been saying this for a while now, because we talk to you in Indianapolis as well, that you're very high on Reich. Not only do you have Reich, who's a seasoned experienced coach, but you have Bill Musgrave as well. So you do have
Also a big fan of that.
Okay. So you got the veteran quarterback in Geno Smith. So if you do take a developmental player like a Eller or a Carson Beck out of Miami,
Sure.
or one of these guys, they're walking it into a good situation.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Carson Beck's a little different because we did see him
Play more,
not injured, with good supporting cast. Like, whatever you view Carson Beck is, at least we've seen it.
Yes.
With Drew Aller, I don't know, got injured, didn't play great last year, played really good the year before. People thought he might come out. Garrett Nussmeier, sort of thought that he maybe struggled this past year, and then you realize he was injured the whole year. Told us the other day that injured his oblique 2 days into camp.
Right.
So I don't know what those guys are, but it would be, to me, worth for an organization that can have the patience to teach, like, would make some sense to say, like, you know what? I'm going to take a shot.
Yeah, it's a good point on Nussmeier, because 6 months ago we were talking about potentially, or 12 months ago we were probably talking about, hey, this guy could be a top of the first round, maybe in a top half of the first round. So we're not going to talk to you before the draft. Number 2 overall. What do you think this ultimately comes down to for the Jets? Is it Arvell Reese or David Bailey, or maybe a wild card like a Sonny Styles?
I mean, they are in a good position because, I mean, it's an awesome spot. They, look, if they had first overall, my guess is it would be a quarterback.
Yep.
But now they get to take the best position player in the draft. So, like, what is it? I don't know, but I think Arvell Reese would be in the mix. Bailey would be in the mix. Just the best football player you can possibly take. I mean, there's not that many opportunities, hopefully, to take an elite talent in the draft. Now they have one. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it's someone who can, significantly affect the quarterback.
And Darren Mougey has gained a lot of respect out there, right, nationally, in terms of the way he's navigating.
Mostly the trades, yeah. I think, I mean, he will look at everything in a very methodical, patient way, but, like, know when it's right to strike. Seems unbelievably open-minded, willing to deal with anyone, clever. Like, I thought the Sweat Johnson deal was just really interesting and smart. And, like, I hadn't thought about it. And when I saw it, I'm like, ooh, like, that does make sense. So, like, deals like that are ones that I think make everyone in the league go, like, all right, like, I think they're going to be okay.
Thanks for your time, as always.
All right, thanks, man.
Judy, so great to see you. It's our annual visit, the NFL League meetings.
Happy to be here.
How you doing? You enjoying
Great.
the sun?
Yeah, after the winter we've had, you bet. Absolutely.
So you have a great spot here because you're one of the reporters who talk to people early. And Aaron Glenn's boots on the ground. He just got in late last night. So I'm going to date myself a little bit, just give some background. So he got in Saturday night. It's Sunday morning. You talked to him not too long ago.
Yeah.
What did you try to get out of that interview?
Well, what I did get out of the interview was, like, they very intentionally wanted to add veterans not just to the roster, but to the coaching staff. They value experience, people who can sort of help the young guys. There's obviously a lot of youth on the team, and I think he sensed that they also needed veteran guidance and experience to like help those young guys develop.
Did you sense something different out of AG than maybe last year at this time when he was just taking over and he'd just been head coach of the Jets for a couple months? Now he's got a year under his belt.
Yeah, I mean, I think he talked about being more intentional about decisions and like not rushing decisions, like really thinking through. He said he wanted everything. I asked him, what did you learn? Like year two, every coach, when they're a first-time head coach, like sort of, it's like the hurricane of stuff comes over them. And so then when they finally have time to reflect, and he said like he realized he wanted to be very intentional about decision making. Everything should be process oriented. Like, so I think we'll see more of that, like more, I think, hopefully calm, reasoned decision making, not being reactive to things.
What did you make of the staff changes? Most notably, obviously, he brings in a new offensive coordinator, Frank Reich, and Aaron said that, hey, I went through the defensive coordinator interview process, and during it just came to me that
he should do that.
The
Right.
fire is still burning. That I want to call it place.
Well, I asked him about that, why he got to that decision, and he said he just felt like last year, like it had been lopped off and taken from him. And he said, like, he says he thinks that's a big part of the reason why he got the job was because of his skill at calling plays. And so he wanted to get back to that. You often hear coaches say when they're first-time head coaches, like they want to be able to coach the whole team. And so they give up what their specialty is. And then they sort of come back to this where they're like, that's their bread and butter, and that's how they feel connected to the team. Ironically, Robert Saleh said the same thing, right? Like he gave up defensive play calling and he felt detached from the team as a result. And so he's going back to that. And that's sort of the same, like Aaron feels like more of a connection. Like, they're just sort of in the nitty gritty of a team when they're calling the plays.
What about the selection of Reich? Here's a guy who's been in the league for a long time. Obviously, Bill Polian, I remember, talked about him when he was a player and said maybe this is the best backup quarterback in the National Football League at that point. And then he's had an interesting coaching career, coaching with a number of different quarterbacks along the way.
Right. And I think all of that is why he was attractive to Aaron and why he wanted him on the staff. Again, I think experience is important. And because he's had experience with a wide variety, I mean, he played with Peyton, but he's coached a wide variety. And let's set the Carolina Panthers aside because that went sideways, not entirely of his making. But when he was the coach in Indianapolis, remember, they were going through so much then, like Andrew Luck, like there was just so much going on.
They had different quarterbacks every year.
So many different quarterbacks, and he managed that. And I think that's appealing too, is he's sort of been through the fire. He's certainly faced some adversity. He was also a player, and so he can see from a player's perspective what quarterbacks need to develop and how you develop quarterbacks. So I think the fact that he's been through a lot, he's seen a lot, and he's worked with so many different styles is attractive to this team.
It's interesting on a number of levels because when you look at the head coaches throughout the National Football League, there's probably 25 guys now calling plays on either side of the ball. So Aaron said he's going to take over defensive play calling duties. He hires Brian Duker, who he has a lot of familiarity with from their days in Detroit. Most recently, Duker, of course, in Miami. Then on the offensive side of the ball, he brings in an experienced play caller. So kind of like flipping the script, but last year, a learning process for him in year one, right?
I think there's always, whenever you talk to coaches after their first year as a head coach, they always say that they were like, no matter how well prepared they were, no matter how many years they were apprenticing. I remember Herm Edwards telling me, Tony Dungy like brought him into every meeting before he became a head coach. And still when he became a head coach, like he couldn't believe the stuff that crossed his desk as a head coach, stuff you just, right? Like, what kind of food do you want served on the team plane? What time do you want the team plane to leave? What hotel would you like to stay in on the road? Do you want teams to stay in the hotel the night before a home game, or can they stay at home? Like, just all of it. And I think that's a real learning curve for rookie head coaches. Like, first of all, what do you have to deal with? What can you delegate? And what's the important stuff, right? Like, what do you have to keep an eye on? And I think that's normal that Aaron, spends after that first year, spends a little time reflecting. And clearly what he came away with, first of all, is he needed experience in the building, more experience in the building. And he wants to be more process-oriented in his decision-making.
Okay, one of the biggest decisions the Jets have made so far this offseason, Darren Mougey and Aaron Glenn, was selecting a quarterback. What do you make of the fit of Geno Smith and him coming back for a second stint in green and white?
I just want to say this to Jets fans. First of all, I like it a lot. This is not the Geno Smith who left the Jets. This is not the Geno Smith who left the Jets. First of all, he's a far more accomplished quarterback than he was. He really resurrected himself, and you got to give Pete Carroll a lot of credit, who really imbued confidence in him and backed him, and you could see the results in his play. He is he's older, obviously. He's a much more mature, he's a leader. You can see how he talked to his teammates on the sideline. Like if teammates struggled, receiver dropped a pass, you could see him go over and lift them up. This is a much different guy than he was, than the one who left. And we all remember how it ended. It's a different scenario. I'm really excited. And Aaron Glenn said to me, he thinks he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder because of how last year went, probably because of how things ended at the Jets. He wants to show how much he has developed.
Do you think that really resonates with Aaron? A guy coming in that, okay, my quarterback does have a chip on the shoulder, that he does feel that, hey, for whatever reason, it didn't work out with the Raiders last year, but I did have a 3-year run in Seattle where I could show what I am as a quarterback. And, maybe outwardly or externally, people are saying, so what, you're picking up Geno Smith, where he says, hey, I'm a young 35. I can do some good things in this league.
Yeah. First of all, I think Geno will be motivated to. Geno seems genuinely excited by being back at the Jets. He's really sort of excited about this full circleness of this, that he is back. And I think he wants to show people that he's a different guy, and that what you saw when he was a kid is not what he is now as a 35-year-old, and that he has accomplished things, and that I think he wants to show that. And I think that resonates with Aaron too. Obviously this team had a tough season last year, and and they took a lot of fire last year, and so I think he likes the idea that his quarterback has something to prove too.
Yeah, And I wrote it the other day too. Is that, listen, the Jets last year, they were a one-dimensional offense.
Sure.
When you bring in a guy like Geno, his accuracy numbers have always been up there. We know that he has to work on getting the turnovers down. He's acknowledged that himself. The sacks were an issue last year with the Raiders, but again, he's going to be working behind a better offensive line. And then you look
and he has weapons.
Yeah. So
can we finally just get the ball to Garrett Wilson? That's just all I'm asking. I just want Garrett to get the ball.
I think he's gonna get the ball. And another thing about Geno is that I think you're gonna have an opportunity to have a really good play action game, because the Jets ran the football well last year.
Absolutely.
And he makes you defend every blade of grass, right? Because he's a good vertical thrower.
That's right. And he can throw the ball around. I think we will see I think we will see a much improved quarterback. This situation, and again, they have pieces. It's a better offensive line. I think you've sort of got the Raiders were a mess in a lot of ways. It wasn't just personnel. There were problems on the coaching staff. Yep. It was a dysfunctional mess. It was a mess. So I think you sort of have to say, all right, that wasn't, if you're looking at that and thinking that was all on Geno, no, it was not all on Geno. There was a lot going on there. Including, it was so bad that, the offensive coordinator leaves in the middle. It was just a mess. So set that aside. But if you look at the Seattle years, you would take that.
Yeah, no doubt.
You would take that.
2 of those years, he's north of 4,000 yards
he was
passing.
a Pro Bowler. You would take this. So, and I think he is a young 35. So I don't think we're at the drop-off point yet. And again, I think he's motivated, and I think that's, when you see the best players in the NFL, like they all, even if they have nothing to be motivated about, even if they have no reason to have a chip on their shoulder, somehow they conjure something
Right.
that gives them a chip on their shoulder and that drives them. But I think he does have a chip on his shoulder. I think he thinks that people think after the Raiders year that was a disaster and he'll never be able to get back. And I think he's motivated to show like, yeah, that wasn't me.
How about it being a low risk move, and then also, I don't even want to get into high reward, but you're raising the floor, right?
Yeah.
With Geno, big time, and then you talk about from a financial ramifications.
Yeah, right.
Hey, you're on the hook for maybe $3 million.
Right. No, it's a really smart business move. You are getting a competent. Aaron Glenn used this word competent. We're going to get a competent quarterback. Okay, that's great. It's also a smart business move. You're not using your draft capital. You have plenty of money to spend, but you've got other needs. You don't need to spend big, and you got, again, competent quarterback play, and they've got all of their draft capital still to use this year and next year. Obviously, Geno Smith is not your long-term answer. He's 35 years old. Yeah. So you've got to start to, somewhere along the line, get young quarterbacks into the pipeline. I asked Aaron if you need to come out of this draft with a young quarterback, and he said, we need to come out of it with good players. And I'm like, so not necessarily a young quarterback? And he's like, good players. I'm like, okay.
So what do you think?
I don't know. Smart teams draft quarterbacks, even not necessarily in the first round, but just draft quarterbacks repeatedly until you hit one and develop them. And if nothing else, if you're good at developing them, they become trade fodder.
So you think they're drafting?
You have a pipeline.
At some
I don't
point.
know. At some point in the next 2 seasons. I mean, next year they have 3 first-round draft picks. Like they are going to control the first round of the draft next year. But when you have this much draft capital, you can also move around the board and pick up more draft capital, and that's that gives them a lot.
Do you know your assignment for draft weekend?
Are
you going to be at One Jets Drive?
No, I am actually going to be at the Giants.
Oh, come on, Judy.
Yeah, I'm going to be at the Giants. Well, they made a coaching change, that's always a big deal, and they've got a high pick too. I mean,
but they're number 5 overall.
Mike Garafolo, my colleague Mike Garafolo at the NFL Network, and I joke about each year which team I will go to because the last few years the 2 teams have had high draft picks, so it's like which. I always feel like it's good to go to one, and then if you have to race over to the next one, you just hop in the car and get to the other one. And,
yeah. Your thoughts on Darren Mougey, how he's navigated throughout the offseason?
I think they've done really well this offseason. I think they've done, as you said, I think they've made some really financially smart moves. I mean, listen, trading Justin Fields, getting something for Justin Fields was good. I mean, I think he's managed this well. I mean, obviously you have to hit on players. You've got to get good players in there. I do think going the decision, obviously, which is an organizational one, to sort of inject more veteran leadership in there, I think is an important one because that helps, an inexperienced head coach. I mean, Aaron Glenn is still learning on the job, and having veteran leadership in the locker room can help that. Because those guys can, Demario Davis, Mika Fitzpatrick, those guys can help direct the locker room.
I'm glad you just mentioned that because from my perspective, the Jets added 3 quarterbacks this offseason. It's Geno Smith, it's Demario Davis, and it's Mika Fitzpatrick. And Demario is a guy who obviously has a lot of affection for the Jets coming back a 3rd time here, but he's got a ton of admiration for Aaron Glenn. Right. And he's going to be that Mike linebacker. He's going to be central command for this team.
Well, and he's another guy, in his comments about coming back to the Jets, that reminded me a lot of when Aaron got the job, about how much it means to them to be the ones to try to turn the Jets around, because they have the history. And so so that's meaningful. I think that Demario Davis, I mean, he's obviously late in his career, but one of the final things he can do is help turn this franchise around. And I think the injection of veteran leadership is going to be very important for this team, and we're going to see the results there.
I like the way Demario articulated that. He said that my mission was done in New Orleans.
Right.
I got to go back.
This is right.
Yeah, I got to have a mission here now in New York where I'm going to help this team.
Yeah.
And when you talk about veteran leaders, I can't think of a better one. And now if the Jets draft a young linebacker here early, I could be lining up next to Demario Davis. And then Minka is a guy who grew up in Jersey.
Yeah, right.
So he comes home, and he also has that quarterback mindset that he'll be able to direct everything in the secondary. And the other thing about Minka is that last year he was in Miami, so he was with Duker. He was
Right.
with Jet Safeties coach
Right.
Ryan
He
Slowick
can
as well.
translate that to the players.
Right.
That's always important to have somebody who can translate to the guys on the defense, like what the defensive coordinator wants.
Financial flexibility is still there, and then the draft capital.
Really important.
So number 2 overall as we look ahead to the draft, a lot of people are saying Arvell Reese. Some folks saying David Bailey. Others are saying maybe, hey, go linebacker. Put a Sonny Styles next to Demario Davis. What do you think about where the Jets are at early?
I have no idea what they're going to do with the pick. I'm not sure they know what they're going to do with the pick at this point. It's early. They are, I mean, having 2 first-round draft picks and having one so high, they can add really good players who will make an immediate impact, and that's what they need, right? Like they need to pick, especially at number 2. If they use that number 2 pick and don't move off it, like you should be able to get an impact player, a day 1 impact player there. So they're in a really good spot to, like, they've done a lot of work on the roster this offseason.
Yeah.
Like it's been pretty dramatic, and they are in a position to keep doing that because of where they're drafting. And then next year again, like 3 first-round draft picks.
So how do you balance that all? The need to, we want to win games now, but we also want to keep on building this thing the right way.
It's hard. I mean, you see people in the league all the time trying to balance that. I mean, they obviously need to win games, right? You need to show signs of progress, like just to have everybody buy in, right? Like that's the best way to sell it to the players is, look, it's, right? You're making progress. It's working. We're on the right track. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to have, you don't have to have a 13-win season, but you need to win games and show that you're taking steps. It's hard. I mean, it tests the patience of people in the NFL, because certainly the patient approach is the one that sort of intellectually is the right thing to do. Like, oh, you've got financial flexibility. You've got all these draft picks. Yes, we just have to be patient, and we've got to draft and then develop these guys. And of course, the reality is once you get into the season, it's like we also need to win games, and the fans are losing their minds. We need to win games.
Right.
It's hard.
Fascinating division, though, when you're talking about
Very.
New England just advanced to the Super Bowl. They're not going away. You got the Bills, who've been in the playoffs for, 7 consecutive seasons. They got Josh Allen, who's an MVP candidate every year. Miami seems
just change their head coach.
I know. And Miami seems to be a team in a transition themselves.
Yeah, Miami, I think, is in a. Well, I think they've done the tear down, and so they are now in the rebuild. I mean, they seem to be tearing it down to the studs and rebuilding. I find Buffalo to be, I mean, the Patriots' turnaround last year was remarkable, and just incredible work. The Bills are the most interesting team to me because they have been in the playoffs so much, and they still fired the head coach because they didn't think he could, or the owner at least did not think he could get them over the top. And it's very clear that the owner, Terry Pegula, looks at this and says, we've got Josh Allen for this window of time. We have to win the Super Bowl, right? You've got this absolute stud. And so now they are doing everything possible. And so they're going with a first-time head coach. Now, Joe Brady was in the building, and so obviously there's a great comfort level between him and Josh Allen, and that's important. But again, he's a first-time head coach, so you have no idea,
So for the Jets, you look at it, Patriots, Bills, Dolphins in transition. We'll have to see what happens. The AFC's going to be fascinating throughout. And we'll have to see how this all plays out after the draft. So I want to ask you, league meetings, what's got your attention the most here in Phoenix?
Oh, I think that, the fact that they don't have they're not making any progress on a contract with the game officials, and there's probably going to be a work stoppage there, and they're sort of laying the groundwork to prepare for that is a really interesting thing. And I know fans are not paying attention to it now, and they shouldn't, because it's the off season and we've still got months to go, but they're not making any progress, and they've been trying for 2 years. And so the fact that we're now in, April essentially, and there's is probably going to be a work stoppage. Their contract expires at the end of May. Then you have to start the clock, and they're laying the groundwork to basically correct calls from New York. There's a rule, that they're going to have to vote on, which I assume will pass, that would be used if they have to use replacement officials. And for fans who are old enough and who were paying attention 14 years ago, the last time they used replacement officials, you might remember how that went.
Yeah.
Not great. Not great. So that is what has caught my attention, is that they are preparing for that possibility. And do we get to that possibility?
No immediate end in sight, you don't see.
No.
No.
I think they will not reach an agreement before it expires at the end of May. And then I think it's just a question of, can they get one done, right before the season starts? Otherwise, they're getting ready to use replacement officials.
Well, and how about international expansion? We talk about it every year, but
more games.
How far away are we from an 18-game regular season?
Well, they've been waiting all this time for the Players Union to have a permanent executive director, so that has happened now. J.C. Treader, that happened a week ago, I think. I've lost track of time, but a week. So J.C. Treader is now in place. Needless to say, the players are in no rush to negotiate on this. They're not interested in 18 games. The league would like to start talks because 18 games would allow them to play a 16-game slate outside of the country. They are selling there's a lot of interest in those games. They could sell that package to television networks or streamers or whoever it's going to be. That's a big way to boost revenue for them. It's going to be interesting to see how fast they want to start those negotiations. Again, the players are in no particular rush, but the league is.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, as far as the 2026 regular season is concerned, just seen the news the other day that Seahawks are going to open on Wednesday night,
right?
Because the NFL has a game in Australia between the Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers.
Right. And that's
so
Thursday.
This thing continues to expand.
Right, and that will be Thursday. It's in Australia. It's in Melbourne, so it will be played at 10:35 on Friday morning,
locally,
Australia time. So that will be a primetime game for us here in the United States. But yeah, you do see that, right? They are now playing the season opener on a Wednesday to accommodate that. And as you just keep growing and growing, they're going to play in Rio de Janeiro this year. They're playing in Mexico City, Europe, of course, multiple games in Europe, Paris for the first time. So, yes, that's not going away because that is a fertile ground for growth.
Well, we'll have to see what happens with the Jets when the schedule comes out in May, but it was
They're a blast. You've been to international games. I covered them for the first time last year, and it is, I know some fans are skeptical and don't like that they're taking home games, but it's such an amazing environment. Fans there are so excited, and it means, I went to the Dublin game and one of the London games, in Dublin in particular, the fans and local businesses, they were so excited that the NFL was there. It meant so much to them that the NFL was there. It was really cool. It was like a mini Super Bowl environment. Really, really great environment.
Well, the Jets wear the green.
That's right.
And we also have the marketing rights in Ireland,
right.
so I would think it's only a matter of time before the green and white play in Dublin.
Get yourself on that trip. It is. It was Dublin's a great city. It's great. It was a lot of fun.
Great seeing you.
Yeah, great to see you.
Tom, so great to see you. You never get a rest, it feels like. Just after free agency, now we're here at the league meetings, and then around the corner is the draft.
Yeah, we're 3 weeks away, 24 days as we record this, I believe, from the draft beginning. It's just this year in particular felt really jammed together. The calendar's a little bit different, I think, just in terms of the cadence of things. There was the extra week before the league meeting, so we kind of had a little bit of a lull, but there's always those kind of, aftershock trades and things that are left over. And you look at it right now, the big money stuff has mostly happened, but there's still a lot of big name veterans, former Pro Bowlers and stuff that are sitting out there, and so that'll give us some action over these next few weeks.
That's a good question. The Jets filled several needs after the league year, of course, through trade and free agency. A position that people are still targeting, I think, externally for the Jets would be receiver. Do you expect any veteran movement coming up, or you think teams are going to get through the draft and then see where they stand?
It's a little bit of both, because for one thing, when you're talking about those former Pro Bowl caliber guys who might be later in their career, it can take guys some time to wrap their minds around it. you're getting a 1-year, $5 million deal. This is not what you've been paid in the past. And so that sometimes can slow things down. Sometimes guys wait it out, and that big money offer is there. I always think back to when Odell Beckham Jr. He had nothing, he hadn't played, and then all of a sudden, I was on spring break with my kids, so I know exactly the time of year it was, and all of a sudden, 1 year up to $18 million. It was a legit deal with the Ravens. You're like, holy cow! So there is something to be said at times for waiting, but other times it's like, this might be the best offer you have. The other thing to remember is the compensatory formula closes after the draft. And so there are teams that are very conscientious. Their comp picks, if you go out and you make that one mid-tier signing, even if it's like a $5 million deal, that can offset one of your losses and cost you a comp pick. So there are times where those deals will get done the week after the draft. We just kind of have to see how that goes. But certainly, I mean, look at the names. I mean, granted, again, guys who maybe are past the absolute peak of their career, but Stephon Diggs is still a free agent. Juwan Jennings, who's a younger guy, is a free agent. DeAndre Hopkins is still sitting out there. Among others. So you do have some name players here, and those are, at times it may come down to, all right, if everyone's offering kind of the same money, where's my best fit? Where do I have a chance to win a championship? Where do I have a chance to, add to what I hope is a Hall of Fame resume? And those are some of the considerations that have to go through guys' heads.
Most important position in sports, of course, quarterback.
Right.
What did you make of the Jets and the marriage with Geno Smith starting the second stint here with the green and white?
Well, I mean, I know that they looked through a lot of different options at quarterback, and there was different ways that you could have attacked it in terms of free agents, in terms of some of the guys who were getting released. Certainly, we still have the draft coming, and we'll see what the Jets end up doing there as well. Wouldn't surprise me if they draft one at some point. Certainly there's been connections to Ty Simpson. It just is going to depend on the value, how you're approaching the position, the fact that you have 3 first-round picks next year and you don't have to go get the guy now. There's a lot of different things that could happen. But with Geno, it made sense once you got past. I mean, I remember saying it to people. It's like, well, they can't bring back Geno Smith. The Jets can't bring back Geno Smith. But, this is several regimes removed from Geno's first stint. He has, evolved and grown. Obviously had a ton of experience, had the second act of his career in Seattle. Last year was a disaster with the Raiders on every level. Geno was a part of that disaster. But clearly in their evaluation, they feel like he's still got, a lot that you can work with here. And he's the guy that comes in and, he can be kind of that bridge type quarterback until you get the next guy, whether that's this year's draft, whether that's next year's draft, whether that's sometime beyond, although I certainly think that the plan would be in one of these 2 drafts when you got 5 firsts to get a quarterback here. The interesting thing to me was the fact that it ended up being a trade and not a cut and signing, but the way that they approached it, and it made sense because, listen, there's other places that people want to go. Kyler Murray could have vetoed any trade in essence because he wanted to go to Minnesota. Right. And people want to go there and be on the Vikings with Justin Jefferson and with Kevin O'Connell as the coach. There's more unknown when it comes to the Jets. And so the way that you lock in the guy and make sure you get him is you execute a trade. And they came up with a unique structure in terms of, giving him a $1 million raise, but they end up paying 3. The Raiders pay the rest. It's a pick flop. It's not a whole lot to give up here, but they ensured that they got the guy. And then they turned around and did the opposite with Justin Fields, and they basically recouped it too. It made a lot of sense when you looked at it that way. I don't know that Geno Smith is the quarterback for the next 4 years, but I don't know if the Jets need him to be the quarterback for the next 4 years. You're just trying to get back to a core level of competency here. Tons of changes on the coaching staff. We can get into that too. Sure. But, the first and foremost, you need to play with a guy that can go out there and function. And there were times last season, whether it was Justin struggling, whether it was, having to, Tyrod being out there and then getting hurt, whether it was rolling out an undrafted rookie and Brady Cook. These are not ideal situations. With Geno, you know what you're going to get, and you're hoping that with better weapons around him, from Breece to Garrett Wilson to Mason Taylor, they've got some pieces that, all right, if this guy can just play on time in the system, we're going to be a lot more productive than we were a year ago.
Aaron Glenn hires Frank Reich to be his offensive coordinator, a veteran, a guy who played in the league. He's had multiple coaching stops. The best coaches we know are going to match their scheme with the personnel they have. What do you anticipate with Reich in New York and some of the players here, with Geno Smith being the quarterback?
It's a great question because Frank does have a diverse background. I mean, if you go back to his days in San Diego with the Chargers on that staff and the things that they were doing, it was drastically different than what he's doing with Doug Peterson when he goes to Philadelphia and is the offensive coordinator on a team that wins the Super Bowl. In Indianapolis, I mean, he knows about adapting the scheme to different quarterbacks because it felt like he had a different quarterback every year. Whether it was Andrew being hurt, Andrew retiring, trading for Jacoby Brissett, bringing in Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers. I mean, it was all over the place, and you were kind of adapting that. I would imagine that it looks more like, and again, I'm not in the rooms right now. They're piecing this thing together as they go. I have to imagine it looks more like the Phillip Rivers style offense, just because that's more the foundation that Frank has had here. But listen, with Geno, he's had success in some different systems. He played, in Seattle under a couple of different coordinators, including Shane Waldron, who runs a, Shanahan McVay style of a system. He was still there in 2024 with Ryan Grubb, who runs a college style, like a spread offense. Like, you've got guys with a whole diverse background, but to me, as you said, it's not about the scheme. Frank's been around the block, for a long time, and they've got other coaches on that staff who are going to have different influences as well. This is about get the ball to Breece, get the ball to Garrett Wilson, get the ball to our other playmakers, figure out what your play style is going to be. It's probably more, in my mind, about the players and about the attitude of the offense than it is about, okay, we're putting in this bucket of exactly what our scheme is.
What do you think's more likely, Jets take a quarterback early or take a quarterback maybe late, like day 3? You mentioned like they're doing all their homework on everybody, which they should with the due diligence. And you mentioned the draft capital, not just this year, but in 2027. You got 19 draft picks overall. Yeah. You have 5 first-round picks over the course of the next 2 years and 8 combined in the first and second rounds.
It's instructive if you go back to the Quinn and Williams trade talks, where the Cowboys had offered a 2026 first rounder. They could have had 3 firsts this year. The Jets became the only team that I can remember to actively say, no, we want the first in 2027, and to actually execute a trade where you push the first back, because historically that's been like downgrading it by a round and when you're pushing it back a year. But part of the reason that they did that was, number one, the 2027 draft as a whole is regarded as better, but the 2027 draft is also regarded as being a lot better, potentially. Again, there's all kinds of things that can happen with transfers and NIL and portal and all that stuff and who comes out, but 2027 is regarded as a better quarterback draft. So you got optionality. There's nothing to say you can't draft one, let's say in the mid rounds this year, and take a shot on, just hypothetically throw a name, a Carson Beck, a Garrett Nussmeier, somebody with upside who you've seen them play really well. In Nussmeier's case, he was hurt all last season. In Beck's case, he's played at a couple of different schools. And just say, let's get him in. We don't have to play him, but let's cut him loose in the preseason and see if we got something. That wouldn't preclude you from them saying, all right, we're getting a guy in the first round in 2027. Now, if you draft Ty Simpson in the first round this year, that's probably a pretty strong signal you're not going to do it again in 2027. And so, but you owe it to yourself. And listen, Darren Mougey has earned a lot of respect within the league over this past year based upon how he's conducted business. People have found him to be very transparent. They've found him to be very smart about how he's doing it. You don't, quite frankly, always hear that about first-time general managers. And a lot of people didn't really know Darren well, but I've talked to so many people who he talked to in various negotiations and things who all came away with a pretty strong sense of like, this guy's impressive in terms of what he's doing here. He owes it to himself, to the Jets organization, to Aaron Glenn, to Woody, to say we're going to dig in on every single one of these guys, because you don't know. Yes, your percentages are higher taking one in the first round in terms of success rate, but half those guys fail too. Your percentages are much lower in those later rounds, but there are Brock Purdy's out there. There are Tom Brady's. There's not many. It's rare. But every now and then you can find that. And if you get a cost-controlled quarterback who's not even a first-round pick, and for 3 years he's basically playing for the minimum, you can completely change how you run your entire operation. So, if it were me, and I covered, the Packers closely early in my career, Ted Thompson, who was a Ron Wolf disciple, his philosophy was a little bit different than Ron's, but, the Ron Wolf creed was always draft one every year, draft a quarterback every year, sign a quarterback every year, and just have this constant churn of different guys. I believe in that. I think that is a good way to do it, as long as you do it with the understanding. You have to shape the environment of, hey, just because we draft a quarterback in the 4th round, it's some guy you watch play on Saturdays in the SEC. That doesn't mean he's the guy. This is us taking a shot. We want to have quarterbacks coming through the system. You keep moving them up. If it works out, you trade them. You get more picks. You keep drafting them.
Did it go under the radar? The Jets added Bill Musgrave. Like we talked about Reich a little bit, but Musgrave has so much experience in this league, working with so many different guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I know Bill going back to his days as the Vikings offensive coordinator and Leslie Frazier. Great man, just a really wonderful human who has been around. You're right. He was with Kevin Stefanski last year in Cleveland, or last couple of years, but last year coaching the quarterbacks. Bill is he's a very funny guy. He's got kind of a reserved type of a personality, but he knows that position really well. And so absolutely, if you're, it's like a baby bird. If you're getting a young quarterback, you want to have the nest, and that is all the people around who are going to touch that quarterback as he's coming along and learning how to fly. If you have the wrong people around him, or you don't have the right setup, you have conflicting agendas, or you have upheaval and turnover, it makes things more difficult, which if you're a Jets fan, and I understand that there's probably people looking at this last offseason and going, what in the world are we doing? Like, you fire the defensive coordinator, Steve Wilkes, at the end of the year. You clean out a lot of the defensive staff. Yeah. You then bring in an outside defensive coordinator in Brian Duker, who is not going to call the plays, but AG is now going to call the plays. And then 3 weeks later, you fire the offensive staff and completely overhaul it. After firing some guys early, then you part ways with Tanner Inkster. It's just like, oh, what are we doing? I would say this, and this is not like a judgment. It's more just the way to think about it. I would much rather that happen after year one, when the new quarterback, the young quarterback, is not there yet, then let's say you get through this year and you get a little bit better, and now the pressure's on and we got to do something. Now you change the coordinator after 1 year. I would much rather, again, and it's with respect to Tanner, who I like, it's just organization. If I were a fan, I would rather you make that move after year one and just say, it's not working, it's not going to work, we need to do this different. Do it now before you get that young quarterback in the building, so that guy's not a year into his career and everything blows up.
Yeah, I'm telling people repeatedly that let's look at results afterwards, because people are saying, well, AG wanted to look at this from a CEO type level where it's 30,000 feet. And, I wanted to be the guy up here, and I was going to let my coordinators call plays. But there's 25 or so head coaches in the league who are calling plays now.
Yeah, and think about it from just a resource perspective, too. If you're paying, the head coaching salaries have escalated so much over the last 2 years. Aaron Glenn, a couple of years ago, if he were making what he would make, he would have been one of the highest paid first-time head coaches ever. But now the pay scale has expanded so much. He's not that high, but he's still making a lot of money. Part of the way that teams have begun to look at this is, and the reason you're seeing a lot of the guys this year in particular are calling plays, part of that, I think everyone except John Harbaugh, part of that reason is because if I can be the play caller on one side, that means I can put my resources, my actual money that I have to pay staff, on the other side. And I can pay more money to get the right coordinator and get the best people at those positions. There's nothing wrong with having a CEO head coach who doesn't call it. Dan Campbell, who, of course, Aaron Glenn worked with in Detroit, has kind of gone back and forth of like he's taken over the play calling when he has felt he has to. I believe Drew Petzing will call it this year, but Dan's done that on a couple of times. Why? It was the right thing to do for the team in that moment. But there's not as many of those, and part of it, it's not the only reason, but part of that is it's the resource allocation. If you're not going to call it now, well, we can't afford to have one of the highest paid coordinators on both sides of the ball. And that just becomes more of a challenge here when you're putting it together, because there are budgets. There's not a salary cap for coaches, but you do have a finite amount of money that your owner is allowing you to spend on coaches. So having somebody calling it on one side of the ball, it does actually make, just from a structure of the staff standpoint, it does make a difference.
All right. Well, I could go on for hours with you, but a couple quick ones. You mentioned about defensive staff and Aaron Glenn calling plays. There's familiarity there with Brian Duker. They go back to their days in Detroit.
Yep.
So right from the get, they'll know the same language, where he had never worked with Steve Wilkes before. At number 2 overall, right now as we sit here on the eve of April, do you think it's a 3-horse race? Or Reese, David Bailey, and maybe Sonny Styles? Or, or is it wide open?
I think that people took the Jermaine Johnson, Tavondre Sweat trade as like a tell that, all right, they're trading Jermaine because they're going to draft a pass rusher at number 2. I wouldn't look at it in quite that linear of a sense. Jermaine Johnson's a talented guy. He's had injuries, but he's a very talented player, a little bit older on the second, for a guy going into his second contract. But it came down to he's not probably a long-term fit for what we want to do with AG running this defense. let's trade him, take that money off the books. He was due a substantial amount in his 5th-year option, and bring in Trevante Sweat, who's a big nose tackle, which you can't find many of those guys. When Sweat's on, he's pretty good. That was more just about like, all right, again, managing our resources, right? How are we setting this up? If we're not going to pay Jermaine Johnson $30 million a year, well, let's trade him now and get a good player that we feel like we can plug in. I believe, again, and this is going to sound cliche, but truly, if you're at number 2, you owe it to yourself to take the best player possible. You can't think, yes, there is a need element to everything. And if you've got a superstar player at one position, you're not going to draft a running back, I don't think, at number 2 when you've got Breece Hall under the franchise tag, right? But anything other than that, like you can make arguments for different guys. I mean, certainly the names that you mentioned are going to be in that mix. David Bailey, Arvell Reese, who's, and Sonny Styles are more off the ball type of guys. Yep. Could you see somebody else sneaking in that mix? I suppose, but if you're at number 2, you have to go down to, all right, who is going to be able to make the best impact for this team? Like, what is the best bet we can make on one of these guys? I don't think that it is just about position specific and, oh my God, you took David Bailey. What are we going to do at linebacker? It's not that specific. We just paid Demario Davis. How are you going to draft? No. Get an impact player. You need impact players at different positions. It's number 2. It's not number 22. 22, you can argue a little more for need. 2, go out and get the baddest dude that you can possibly get and roll from there.
Thanks for going clean there. Great catch.
Yeah, I was about to. No, I didn't want you to edit. So
appreciate it, Tom.